Hey guys, welcome back. Section 5, this is where the fun begins. We're going to have a lot to do. We've got our background set up. Our people are in the space, but they don't look anything like they should. They don't look like they're actually in the space. So what we have to do now is really quite a bit of work to make sure that they actually do blend in. And I've come up with some ways to make this easy, but I would say by and large this is not an easy thing to do. Basically, probably why you bought this tutorial. If it was really easy, then you would have just figured it out for yourself. So let's go ahead and get into it. Well, to start off with, whenever you're doing a composite or something like that, there's a lot to keep track of with colors and light and dark and things like that, and it can be a bit overwhelming to keep track of everything. So what I do, instead of trying to keep track of everything at the same time, I've created this little action that I'm providing for you guys as well, and it's called a full check action. So click on your full check action and hit play. To get to your full check action, just it's in the action folder that is included in this download. Just double click on the full check action. Alright, so let's close out our action. Now here's our full check group. All this does is it creates layers. You can turn this group on. It creates layers that alter the image ever so slightly in certain ways. This one down here in the bottom, channel mixer, just takes all the color out of it. So that's what this image looks like in black and white. This layer makes everything in the image the same hue, so you can compare relative saturations. This image makes everything the same luminosity, so you can compare relative saturations as well as relative hues. I'll get to all this stuff in a minute. If you combine these later, you can see now the only thing that you see is relative saturations. You don't even see light differs or hue adjustment differs. You only see saturation differences. So we can see pretty easily here, for instance, that the bike, being pretty gray, is not very saturated, right? Down here on the ground, all this light here is saturated. We can see there's color here, there's no color here. Saturation is how much color is present. So we can already see that saturation is one major cause why these people don't look like they're in this area, because things reflect light back on each other. If you had all this color on the ground, some of that color would be reflecting back on these bikes. So that's one area. But we always start with the easiest one first, and that is light. Alright, so this channel mixer, we're going to leave that on for probably about 20 or 30 minutes here. And we're just going to make sure this image looks good in black and white, because here's the thing. If your image does not look good in black and white, you have no chance of it looking good in color. And that is just 100% true. So if your image looks good in black and white, you got a chance of it looking good in color, but you got to start off with black and white, especially when it comes to compositing. So let's take care of some relatively difficult things to do yet. We're going to make our man invisible. We'll focus on one person at a time, just making sure that she looks good. Well, first thing first, you probably noticed that there's no shadow in this image. That's a problem. So we need to get a shadow. Now, if this person had no recorded shadow in the photograph, you'd probably have to try to make one. That's incredibly hard to do. I don't suggest it. I suggest photographing people on Seamless so you can do what you can to get their shadows back. Okay, so let's talk about that. She's cut out of her background, and obviously I can't see the shadow that exists. But if I hold down Shift and click on the layer mask, I basically am given back this. I'm given back what looks like, the same image, but without the layer mask on it, because it just disables the layer mask. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try to steal the shadows that exist on this image. It's not really that hard to do, actually. Just got to do it. So I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to Command J. Okay, so now I've got basically two of the same exact layers. This top one I'm going to shift click, and so now we have this is cut out from its background. Okay, this one's not. They're in the same exact place. Okay, we don't want to put the layer mask on here. So this layer mask, I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and we're going to fill this with white. Okay, because we want the layer to actually be what it is. Okay, now we're going to get into our blending modes, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So what we need to do with this is I need to figure out a way to just make the shadow visible, but not the rest of the stuff. So how do we do that? Well, shadows are generally darker than things, right? So we can use a blending mode that's going to allow us to do that. So let's try that. I'm going to double click on this adjustment layer. There we go. And now what we can do is we can change our blending mode. To try something like normal, we can either shift it to darken or down to multiply. We're going to stick with multiply, and the reason is because it turns out just a little bit more natural than darken. You can see darken gets a little bit of weird things going on. Okay, so we're going to stick to multiply. Now I can choose either here in my blending options where this is going to be visible, or I can also choose that in a different, I can choose that with levels. So what we're going to do is this layer, I don't want this layer to be visible, well actually we are going to use levels, sorry. I want this layer to be visible everywhere, so we're going to hit OK. Now the problem here is that it's too dark. I've turned it to multiply, it's just way too dark. All I want is the shadow information, but it's made everything dark. So what I need to do is lighten it up a little bit. So we're going to grab an adjustment layer and I'm going to go to levels, okay, and then we're going to clip this. Remember, clipping makes this level adjustment layer only visible where this underlying layer is. So Option Command G. Now I'm going to bring my white level up from the right to the left, okay. And what this is going to do is just going to make my brights brighter. That's all this is doing, is just making my brights brighter. And when you do that, it basically eliminates, let's just go ahead and close that out. When you do that, it takes those dark areas and just makes them a little bit brighter, and we're left with shadows. So here's the before and the after, okay? So if I just set this back to normal, this is what the image would look like. I'm just making the light areas lighter and then changing it back down here to multiply. Okay, so there's some shadow information for you, which is really cool. It's not that useful just yet, but I'll show you how it will be in just a second. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to click on this layer mask and I'm going to hit Command I. So we're going to make this layer mask invisible now, with the layer invisible. We're going to make this layer that has our person above it back visible. And now I'm going to paint with just a regular brush. I'm going to paint white on this layer mask. So this is my shadow. Let's just group this and call this shadow. Okay? And now I'm just going to paint on this layer mask white under this area, and it's going to reveal the original shadow of our bike. Alright, we'll go all the way to about there. So it's going to reveal the original shadow of the bike because it's under the bike, right? So we just like copy the shadow. Now let's just choose a nice large soft edge brush and fade it away ever so slightly. There we go. So it's still looking pretty good there. So we basically like brought in the shadow from, you know, what was there before, which is pretty cool that you can do that. I just think that's really great. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with the man. Alright, let's just go ahead and duplicate this. So Command J. We'll hit Command G, double click on this, call it shadow. Okay, I know I want to change this layer mask all the way to white. Okay, I want this to be a multiply layer. I want that layer to be invisible. I want to create a levels adjustment layer, Option Command G to clip it, and I want to bring this up to a level that makes it visible exactly where I want it to be visible. You can always change this later. You can double click on that layer and change this. Don't worry about making it perfect the first go round. Hit Command I on that layer mask. We'll make our guy back visible again, and then I'm going to paint white here. So we can see how much easier that makes things. Instead of trying to like figure it out, you know, from scratch, like, oh, how do I just paint a shadow? I'm just using the exact shadow that already existed when we made these images in the first place. So you can see it makes it a lot easier. Now we still have a couple things to kind of think about and look about, and I'm going to zoom out because this is important to. It's an important part of the process. So here in black and white, you see relative light levels, obviously, duh. But there are a lot of things that you can do with this black and white that you see. Okay, there are things like, let's just move this to the top so I can grab a color. You can see if things fit in as light and dark. Like, is this ground too light or too dark for our subject? What do you guys think? Too light or too dark? It's a little bit too light. And the reason is, there's a lot of darkness going on here. If this ground were this light, light reflects, right? It like bounces off things and goes in another direction. So if there were this much light on the ground here, it would bounce off the ground and reflect back onto our bike, just a little bit more than it has done. So this ground, for instance, needs to be darker. We just, we figured that out. Our ground needs to be darker. And if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal because we're using adjustment layers. So let's just say that, yeah, you know what, our ground needs to be a little bit darker. So we're going to open up our background group, okay? And here in our background group, I'm just going to grab a levels adjustment layer. We're just going to push this to the right a little bit, make that a little darker. Doesn't matter how dark or how light at this point. You can change it at any point, okay? I'm going to hit G for the gradient tool. We're going to use the linear gradient, and I'm going to choose the foreground to transparent gradient. Okay, and then we're going to go from white to transparent. So we're basically going to make a gradient that goes straight up. Now, the layer mask that comes on this layer is already white, so I'm going to hit Command I to make it invisible. Okay, so we've got a black layer mask. I've got a gradient tool that we're going to be going from the foreground color, which is white, to transparent. So that will make it go from visible and fade away. And I'm going to drag this from the bottom right up like that. Okay, so bottom up like that, as far as you want. You can, in any pattern you want. You can go from the left, you can go from the right. You really just do whatever you want. Okay, do it again and you're good to go. Alright, and that looks pretty good. There's going to be another guy back there, but we can see that that looks good. Let's just double click on there and we'll say that, like, you know what, maybe it should go even darker. Well, we can do that too. So it doesn't really matter. If you decide to make it lighter, you can do that. You don't have to get this part right in the beginning. But it's just important to be able to see, like, you know, does that look better or does that look better? This looks way better because the amount of light that's present in this area more closely matches the amount of light that's present on our motorcycle. Okay, so that's an extremely important thing to do because it's going to make someone actually look like they're in the scene. So here, when we're working with in black and white, which is what we're doing right now, I'm not concerned about color. I'm just concerned about light. So if something doesn't fit, the only problem that it could be is it's too light or too dark. And that's the reason I separate out my color steps from my light steps, is because it's easy. The only thing that can make this look right or wrong right now is it too light or too dark? That's literally it. Alright, let's bring our man in here and we'll see what's going on with our man. Now, she looks pretty good. She looks pretty good. She looks good in this scene. She's got some light on her. I've come pretty close to believing that. Now let's turn this off. You can see our color work is still horrible, right? These colors are not at all correct. But that doesn't matter yet. We're just talking about black and white. Let's bring our man in and we'll see what's going on with him. Okay? So the guy doesn't look as much like he should be in this scene. He needs a little bit more work. So we can either work on the backdrop, which I'm okay doing, or we can just work on the guy himself. Let's do a little bit on the backdrop here. Let's make another level adjustment. We'll make this darker. Okay? Hit Command I on that, and then this time I'm just going to use just a regular brush and just paint some white right over here. Alright, let's see if it still looks good with her in there too. Alright, maybe just paint it back there. Alright, so I'm just kind of like painting things lighter and darker to see how they look at this point. You know, does it look better like that or like that? Maybe somewhere in between. Let's just bring that in. There we go. It looks a bit better. Okay, now the problem's not always going to be just with your background. Obviously, he needs some work himself, right? So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to click on, instead of the background changing that, we're going to go back to the group of the man. We can make her invisible from now. Okay, so we have our guides. Let's just double click. We're going to need to keep this relatively organized. Alright, and we'll just call this man, whatever. So we have our guides, man, and his shadow. Okay, so here in our man, we're going to create some adjustment layers, and these are going to affect just the guy. So we're going to grab an adjustment layer. I'm going to go to curves. You can use curves or levels, really whatever your preference is. And then we're going to hit Option Command G, which is going to clip them. So if I make this either darker or lighter, it's only now going to affect our guy. And you can just tell what looks good, you know, like, does that look right? No. Does that look right? No. You know, here in the middle, if we go a little bit darker, did that fix anything? If we go lighter, did that fix anything? That's the entire strategy for it. If you were hoping for a little bit more magic, I apologize. There's none. It doesn't really matter if it looks good everywhere, is the other lesson. If it looks good in part of the image, then it's fine. You just use a layer mask and mask out that part. So a little bit darker, a little bit more contrast on him. He does look like he's in that scene a little bit better, doesn't he? He's like, okay, cool, yeah. It doesn't look like he should have that much light on him. Let's bring him a little bit darker. That looks a little bit better. Alright, that looks cool. So, you know, the other thing is like the light that's on the front of his wheel right here, or his tire rather. We might say, oh, you know what, that should be a little bit darker too. We'll play around with that when it comes to color, but we'll just go ahead and show you how to do it. Curve adjustment layer, Option Command G, will make that a little bit darker. I'm going to hit Command I on that layer mask to just invert the layer mask, and then paint white right here on my layer mask. And that's just going to make just the top of the wheel a little bit darker, because maybe it needed to be to fit into this background. Okay, so that's like pretty, I don't know, there's kind of a lot to cover here, but while we're still in black and white, this is the easy part. Let's just zoom out. I always zoom out, by the way, because it really helps you to see the image on a different level. If you're too far zoomed in, you tend to miss some things. Like you just miss the overall feel of the image. It's pretty easy to get little details, but overall feel of an image is much more important. That's what's really going to make your image stand out. Alright, he's just a little bit too dark. Okay, so if it has a pretty good overall feel, you know, especially there in black and white, you get a decent chance of it looking good in color. Alright, so looking good so far. Now the next thing we're going to do is, if you're satisfied with how the image looks in black and white, if you're like, oh cool, yeah, it looks great, I'm ready to move on. If you're satisfied with that, then we're ready to make it not black and white anymore, which is totally okay. Just keep in mind that this was the easy part, and that color work is much harder. There are a lot of colors. Alright, so let's turn it off black and white, and we can see instantly what we thought looked pretty good. Now we're like, ooh, that doesn't look good at all. Actually, I'm changing my mind completely on this image. It doesn't look good at all. But there are a lot of reasons why, and I'm going to explain those reasons why. Just like in black and white, okay? When you're looking at something in black and white, it means it's either too light or too dark. When you're looking at something in full color, it means it can either be too light or too dark. It can have too much or too little saturation. So that's saturation, that is value, and this is hue. Or it can be a hue that is shifted one way or the other way from the proper hue that it should be. Okay? So when you're just looking at something in black and white, you have one variable. Here in full color, you have three different variables, and many different variables within the three. So they combine to make a very large number. You know, if we have, you know, x to the power of x to the power of x, we have x to the third instead of just x, which is, you know, it's a much larger number to deal with, especially when you're trying to just think about it. So that's why color work is much harder. Okay, now we've come up with other ways to make it a little bit more simple for you. This way is one of them. You only see the value. Okay, you just see black and white. Now this is another great way to do it. Okay, these check layers will tell you if you are too saturated or don't have enough saturation. Okay, so just right off of the bat, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this layer on, which makes all of our hue the same. Okay, it's just a layer filled with red set to hue. It just changes the hue of everything to the same hue. Okay, and now I'm going to turn this layer on, which is set to luminosity. So all I see now is relative saturations. Being that the only thing that I see is relative saturation, I can do a little bit of work on, especially my background, to make this look good. Your goal here is to make it look good under each of these scenarios. Under the black and white scenario, under this scenario, under that scenario, under this scenario, under that scenario. All of these combinations and different scenarios that we've created here, your goal is just to make it work in all of them. So here in our background, we can see this too saturated on the ground, right? So we have the choice. We can either bring some saturation down from the background or really bring it up on our bikes. I think we should bring it down from our background. If we need to, we can bring some back into our bikes. So here in our background, right, let's go to a hue saturation adjustment layer, and I'm going to lower my saturation. Now I'm going to turn this guy on, which kind of cranks the saturation up, and this just allows me to see a little bit better, right? It cranks the saturation up so I can see better. So here my hue saturation, I'm just going to start lowering the saturation. There we go. And as I lower the saturation of my background, you can see it's going to start to fit my foreground much better. Like, what looks more natural, that or that? Like, based on the bikes and everything. Okay? So that's with the saturation cranked. This is with it normal. And now So this is just basically a visual way of representing saturation. So if I turn this layer off, my image should look a heck of a lot more normal now. There's a before and there's the after. Okay, we don't have a super saturated background. Now we went a little bit overboard in my opinion. We could have had we could have done less. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bring our saturation back up. But what we just witnessed is that one of our big issues was saturation, especially down here where those motorcycles are. Okay, so let's just bring our saturation down just a little bit, and especially here where those motorcycles are, the saturation is way too strong. So let's look at some of this color that we've actually added there since placing our bikers into the scene. Okay, we have our woman. Let's look at her first, and here's the shadow that we added. Remember, we just added the shadow. Well, not only did we add the shadow when we put this to a multiply layer, but we also added some color because there was actually color there, right? So what I want to do is I just want to take some color out of there. So I'm going to go to hue saturation. I'm going to clip that again, and I'm going to take the color out of the shadow. See what a difference that makes? I'm just taking the color out of the shadow. Okay. And now it doesn't look so funny, right? And here, where we see this, we go from this to that, okay? There's a pretty big change there. We're going to keep doing this. It's a little bit complex, but I'll tell you there's just no other way to do it. It's just kind of hard what we're doing. This is why not everyone does it, so good job for sticking with it. Alright, the man too, we're going to do the same thing. His shadow adjustment layer, we're going to go up to hue saturation. Because remember, when we originally did these, we weren't looking at color at all, were we? We were just looking at black and white. So now we have to worry about color. Okay, that's cool. Now also remember when we made this area darker here on the bottom, it did make it darker, but it also affected what? Saturation, right? It affected saturation. So I'm going to need to go to hue saturation again and affect this area and bring down the saturation, especially where I made that darker. As you can see, there's more saturation and less saturation. I'm going to do the same thing again here. Hue saturation, clip that, and lower the saturation. Okay, so we can already see, let's just bring this is like the total. It's kind of complex on what I just did, basically, but we can already see. Let's just turn that and that off. Like this compared to that already looks more natural. So what we're doing is we're identifying problems that exist based on lightness, darkness, hue, and saturation. Or value, hue, saturation. That's the only thing we're playing with here. Okay? So this is what our background looks like now as far as our saturation is concerned. Now here's our hue. Okay? We've got a layer here that turns on luminosity. So basically you don't see saturation and you don't see light and dark, you just see hue. So now we can see the relative hues of this image. Well, what can we say about these relative hues? Well, the background has a lot of this hue going on, doesn't it? Background's got a lot of this. Do I see much of that in my bikes? No. I see some blue, I see some red, those are from the lights that are going to be there, but we get a lot of this like deep orange color here, right? This is the way light works. It bounces around the place and it hits everything. Okay, so if you get a lot of this color in the background, it's going to bounce around and hit your foreground too. So for that hue to not exist in our motorcycles means that the motorcycles are not in this scene. That's basically what it means, right? So what we need to do is we need to add this hue to our motorcycles and then they're going to work. So let's go to bikers. Let's go start off with our woman again. Okay, and the layer that she's on, let's just hit Command G. Woman. Okay. Now we're going to grab an adjustment layer and I'm going to go to curves, and Option Command G will allow me to clip that. So we've got a color that's got some red in it, it's got some yellow in it. It's kind of an orange color, right? So we're going to go to our red channel and I'm going to bring this up a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to go to my blue channel and I'm going to bring that down a little bit. So now we can see we're bringing some of that color or background into the image. Now it doesn't have to like kick you in the face, you know, but we're doing a color shift, and that should start to look better. You can always increase these or decrease these later, it doesn't matter. So let's just turn this off, and then here's the before and the after. So before and the after. Can you see how it just works in this scene better? You should be able to. So here's the before. She's too cool. There's no colors from my scene in there. There's the after. Now she's actually starting to reflect some of these colors that we got going on, right? It's like, wow, okay, that's starting to look like she's actually there. So we didn't do that much of a difference. We changed saturation on our background so far. We made the shadow there. We took the saturation out of that, and we just warmed her up a little bit to match the background. And already she's looking much, much better. So this is why these check layers are so important, because they show you relative hue, saturation, and value in a way that makes it easy to dissect, and then you can know what to add to make it actually work. So pretty cool. Alright, let's open up our man group, and we're going to open him up. And then I'm going to hold Alt or Option. I'm just going to copy the same layer, adjustment layer, to him. So there's before and the after with him. So he's looking, you know, like he's got some of this color that's coming from the scene as well. So also, you know, super important there. Alright, so let's close out our man, and we'll go back to where the woman is visible, and let's just turn on some of these guides. Okay? So, what do we have now? Well, we have a couple things we can look at. Does it still look good in black and white? Yeah, I think it does. Turn this color on. Do my relative hues look good? It helps a little bit if you do this. We're still a little bit saturated in the foreground, but we can take care of that in just a little bit. I think it's looking pretty good. But one thing that I don't see, let's just bring that in, is I've got color from my blue, like this blue light, right? That would be shining. There's going to be a flame here in a bit. I don't see that in my background at all. I see some of the background coming onto her, but I don't see any of what's going on with her affecting the background. So we need to try to figure out how to do that. And lucky for you, I already know how, so I'll just show you. Okay, let's make this invisible. I want some of this blue light to then affect my background. That's basically our goal, right? So where do I have the blue light on the background? Well, we're going to go right back here, and remember when we did this shadow group, what we did was we just kept a certain area that we liked, the shadows, and we just got rid of everything else. Well, we're going to do the same thing here. Okay? So what I'd like to do is I'm going to hold Alt or Option and copy this. We'll just bring that up there. I'm going to hit Command G on this, and we'll just call this ground light. Okay? So we've got 3 groups now. We've got the shadow, the woman, and the ground light, which we haven't actually done anything with just yet. Okay, the ground light, we're going to make this layer mask white again. Okay, now how do we actually capture the ground light? Well, it's not really that hard actually. Just click on this layer and go to Select and down to Color Range, and then click on the color range that's that nice blue that you want everything to be everywhere, right? Alright, so we're selecting that color range, and then I'm going to hit OK. So we've selected that really nice blue color. Now we have a few different options of what to do with the selection. You can use it directly on this layer, or you can use it with something like a curves adjustment layer. Let's start off by using this with a curves adjustment layer. I'm going to grab an adjustment layer, we'll go to curves, and it's going to load that selection automatically into the curves adjustment layer, so that we can make this layer invisible, and we just have a curves adjustment layer that is a representation of what should be visible based on the color of the light, which is kind of complex to explain that, but I think hopefully we get it. So all I need to do with the curves adjustment layer is make it more blue. So I'm going to go to my blue channel, and we're going to pump it up more blue. Kind of nice, right? Let's put a little bit more green in there as well. Alright, now here you can change this to like a color dodge adjustment layer. We just change a couple blending modes here. Color dodge, screen. No, I think normal winds up working out the best. Okay, that does look pretty good. I was hoping we'd be able to get a little bit more blue than that even. Alright, so let's try deleting this layer. And I want to use just go to select color range. It'll just load the same thing as last time. We'll just use this as a layer mask here. So I'm going to hit Command I on the layer mask and then hit Command I again. So now we have an actual layer mask for this layer that is made of the blue from the underlying layer, which is pretty cool. Alright, so now what we can do, let's change our blending mode. Let's hit V on our keyboard and then hit Shift, either plus or minus. And this is going to scroll through all your blending modes. What I want is a blending mode that's just going to look good. That's all I really care about. Alright, this difference seems to look pretty good there, right? Well, it looks good, except it's the opposite of what we want. So, it looks good in the fact that it's really saturated. Alright, let's try changing it to hue or even color. Let's try hue. That looks pretty good. So, changing that to hue is going to bring some of the color of the bike back down onto the environment, right? Which is very, very cool. Alright, so now we're basically figuring out how to get the light that's on her onto the background or our environment as well. It does cut off a little bit over here. So what we want to do is I'm going to shift click on this layer mask. Okay, we're going to change this layer back to normal, and then what I'm going to do is here on this layer itself, I'm going to just grab this color, grab this right here, and I'm just going to paint there. And I'm going to extend this shadow onto the rest of the image here. And this is just going to make it look a little bit more like, you know, it doesn't just stop, because that's not how light works anyway. Alright. So I basically had to do that so I could see what I was doing. Now let's just change this back to hue again. Boom. Hold on shift and click on the layer mask again. Okay. Now this layer mask, I'm going to have to make it white right over here, right? Alright, there we go. So, bringing that in, yeah, it looks, let's just fade it away like that. Alright, so we've got a hue shift there. Now, it's also visible in these other areas. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on my layer mask, and then I'm just going to paint black over here, because I want this visible on the ground, right? Like, I don't need it visible anywhere else. I'm just trying to shed some light onto the ground here. Alright, and hit Alt or Option back on that layer mask. So what we've done now is we've captured some of the ground light from the actual image itself and placed that back onto this image, which is very, very cool. So without that and without the shadow, she doesn't look like she's there. But we were able to get both of those things from the actual original file, which is, I think it's great. Let's go back to our man. He's going to have the same thing going on, isn't he? Okay, Alt or Option, we'll just bring that up to a new layer. Okay, I'm going to hit Command G, we'll call this ground light. Okay, we will make that layer mask visible, and then this might be a little less visible here, but you can do this in a number of ways. I'll show you guys some cool ways if you can't get it as much. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to select down here to color range, and we're going to select out these nice reds here. There we go, and hit OK. Hit Command I on the layer mask, Command D to deselect, and then hit Command I again. Now we're going to change this from normal down to hue, and we should be able to see that red. Now I don't see it a whole lot. I don't really see that much of it, and that's okay, but I would like to see a little bit more, especially up here. You know, I really don't need to see it up there, but I want to see a little bit more on the ground, especially. Like, I'm not seeing that much. So we can try a different way of doing this. And the way that I'm going to use, we're going to make a new layer, and I'm going to go to Select, and then Color Range, and then I'm going to select a color range that's just like a lighter, you know, color here on the ground, something like that, right? And let's make this a little less fuzzy, because that's where light tends to hit. You know, it scrapes along highlights and things like that. So we're going to select that color. Okay, then on this new layer, I'm going to hit Command H real quick to hide that selection. I'm going to grab this nice red color here, you know, that's actually like from the light source that we're going to be putting in. Okay, and then with my selection still active, I just hit it. You can hit Command H. I'm just going to paint just like that. Okay, so that's what we got. Now we can change this back down from normal to something like hue, or we can even go to color. Alright, and then let's see what we've got there. So now this light is affecting our background. There we can see from that color as well. We can just change our opacity a little bit if we want this to be a little bit less visible. But the thing I like about this is that not only is it affecting the ground around him, it's gone on to affect her shadow, which is totally what would happen. The light from this red light would enter into her shadow as well. So it's just a nice way to do it, because it makes it real in two different ways. So with and without the ground light there, you can see definitely does make a big difference. All right, cool. So we're dealing with, you know, two different people in this image. That's one of the things that makes this take a while and makes it just a little bit more difficult. All right. So what else are we doing here? Let's just go back into the women group. I want to take care of this headlight real quick because it's bugging me. So we're going to create a new layer. You can hit Option Command G to clip that layer, and then I'm just going to grab the S for the clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to clone stamp, you know, right down here to something like right over here. There we go, and then it'll just kind of look like the forks just continue to go up here. And then so much of this detail is like, it's all just like motorcycle detail, right? I mean, there are people for sure who would be like, no, that does not look right at all. And they're right. Forks don't do this. But if you do it well enough, all this little like chrome and stuff like that, it should all just wind up blending together. Let's just kind of like bring that down. You can make like little, you know, tubes or something like that as well. There we go. And just kind of like fill that in with a little bit of darkness. I'm going to get rid of this thing as well. Alright. Because it's just kind of like indicative that there was probably something there. Like, why would there be a bracket there with nothing else there? There just probably wouldn't be. So not only that, but this is supposed to kind of be like, you know, like a dinged up kind of like, maybe this is in the future where people can hold fire in their hands and feels pretty good or whatever. So I don't mind that this bike looks like a little bit like chopped up, you know, but it just looks a little bit, you know, better without that headlight on there. And it really wasn't hard to do that. It doesn't look bad, but you know, it's supposed to look kind of chopped up. Okay, so we're already looking much better than when we started. Let's just zoom out here, and we've got her visible. Okay, let's go ahead and make our guy visible as well, and we'll be ready to bring in some fire in just a little bit, which is going to be a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and turn this back on visible. I just want to make sure it really does look good in black and white. This is a good time to change, or just to play around as well. If you'd like to go to hue saturation, if you'd like to go to your curves adjustment layer, and then you can just kind of play with some things. Like, I'm going to make this a bit darker, okay? And we're just going to paint with our regular paintbrush, just a little bit of white on the layer mask back there. This is just going to say, like, you know, do I like it better if this is darker back there? And all you have to do is like turn this off and on and see, like, do you like that better or that better? It's like, oh, cool, I like that better. Do you want it to be darker back there? You know, do you want it to be darker back there? No, I kind of liked it. Maybe just faded away subtly. I don't know. Do you want it to be darker down there? Kind of looks cool. So this is, you know, this is your chance to kind of like build your image how you want to. In other words, like, don't feel like you gotta do, you know, any particular thing either right or wrong or different or whatever. Alright, let's make things a little bit brighter. Curves adjustment layer. Make things a little bit brighter now. You know what? Maybe I want my background to be a bit brighter. Why not? Maybe I don't want that to go down there, so I'll just make that invisible down there. A little bit of light coming from the city in the background. Alright, looks pretty good. Now, here on my man, I'm still thinking that he should be just a little bit darker, especially on his underside there. So I'm going to open him up, well, his group anyway. Okay, and we're just going to grab an adjustment layer, curves, Option Command G will clip that, and I'm just going to make him a little bit darker. And you can do this, like, this does not have to be step by step or sequential. You can do this at the end of your image or whatever. Like, it does not have to be, you don't have to like notice it right now or at any particular time. You could always do this. Okay. Cool. That's looking pretty good. Alright, so we've got these things and we're looking pretty good. Here, you know, we're looking pretty good in black and white. Let's just check our, this is with all the hues looking the same. We've got quite a bit of saturation going on there, but they don't look too off. This is with, let's just turn this on. We can see now, I've made them all the same hue. We've taken luminosity out of the equation and we pumped up our saturation. We can see now there's a little bit of saturation in the bike, not a ton, but we can see some in the shadows at least, and it's looking much more balanced than it was earlier. I think that you guys could probably see that for sure. And I think that, yeah, I think that we're pretty good. We're on the right track. Let's see our relative hues. We've got the hue of the light source here, visible on the ground. Some of the red visible on here, and we've got some of this like orange color being mirrored onto our subject. So I think we're looking pretty good. So we are ready to start bringing in the fire. We still got a lot more work to do, but we're ready to start bringing in the fire, and that's gonna be a lot of fun. So I will see you guys in the next section.